Hey everyone, Leanne here from Kingdom Blogger. So in this video, we're going to talk about site structure. What is it and why it is so important for the crawling process to get your content indexed? So your site structure actually begins with your categories, making sure that you have selected, if you're a new blog, so let's say I'm talking to new bloggers, go simple. 3, maybe 4 categories, but it's also important that you understand how categories work. Categories are like folders that content is put into. Each category should be independent of the others. In other words, if you assign a blog post to a category, it should not also fit in other categories. Every now and then that happens, but for the most part, it's streamlined into the categories that it most makes sense to go into. Okay. Now, the categories are important because when Google crawls your site, it starts with the category link. It comes through the category. And if you think of a category as a sign on the door, when I go inside that door, everything that I find should match the sign on the door. A good way to kind of visualize this is, let's say you have 3 closets, right? And this closet is labeled toys, and this closet is labeled clothing, and the third closet is labeled garden tools. I don't know. When I open that door, number 1, there should only be toys, stuff for my kids. When I open door number 2, there should only be items of clothing in there. And of course, door number 3 should only be things I would use to do yard work, my little tools and hoses and, whatever. Sorry, I'm in gardening mode right now. So if you think of your category like that, that's how you approach assigning it to content. And so when you're mapping out what you're going to have as your blog, like what am I going to write about, you have to organize your content ideas into a minimum of, I would say a maximum in the beginning of 3 categories. I know a lot of people are like, I'm going to have 5 categories. Well, that's great, but start small. Here's why. Many times when you try to add more categories, you're getting further and further away from an idea that helps Google better understand your content. So views are kind of all over the place. This week you're talking about Jesus, and next week you're talking about, a trip to the zoo. Google's like, I don't really kind of understand what to do with you. And so the more consistent in a particular area that you can stay focused in, that's giving signals to Google to help it understand what your site is about and how to classify it. Those are the first steps towards getting your content indexed. It's not actually the content, it's actually your site structure, starting with your blog name, the domain, into those category links, and then through the content. So this is a part most bloggers never do. They're just like, these are my categories, I'm going to write about whatever. And what I see a lot of times is a blog post is going to be assigned to like 2 or 3 categories. That defeats the point of having categories. Okay. Every now and then you might have one that could fit into 2, but that should be like an exception, not the rule. So it's very important that you have your categories set and they make sense. They're not cutesy names. They're like, they make sense. Like, and I'm going to show you 2 of my sites to kind of help you visualize what that looks like in a minute. But if you're writing about prayers, the category should be prayers. If you're writing about, parenting related stuff, the category should be parenting or something to that effect. Now, I know some of you are parenting bloggers. You may have a couple of different categories within parenting, but the overarching sign on the door needs to make sense to the people and to the crawlers as far as what's inside it. Now, when it comes to how you put this information on your website, especially your homepage, very important. What you don't want to do is have the word blog up in your nav menu where you have like home, blog, contact me, shop. That, oh, sorry, I got itchies. That makes no sense to the crawlers. There's no value in that. And it also really doesn't help your readers either to understand what's going on your site. Blog really only means anything to us bloggers. Just regular, normal people have no idea what that word means. And the crawlers, it doesn't do anything for them either because they need an actual word that means something based on what's inside it. Okay. So when you are setting up your site structure, as far as your navigation menu, it should clearly show what your categories are. Why? Because once you submit your sitemap to Google, once you get everything all cleaned up and everything's organized the way it should be, You submit your sitemap to Google. Now you're giving Google this map, and it says, here's the front door, my domain name, my URL. When it comes in, it will then follow the categories that are at the top. And then it's going to continue crawling through each of those doorways, right? And that is an orderly manner of crawling your site. If you've never done all this organization of your site properly, and maybe you never even submitted a sitemap, Google will eventually find your site. It's on the internet. There's links to it. Maybe you shared it on Facebook or whatever. So the door, there's windows open. So we're going to talk about a door and windows. There's many windows. However, any links to your content that's on the internet, those are windows. So if Google comes in your site through a side window, right? Maybe the garage, little garage doorway, or through a bedroom window, it's coming in and it's starting to assess your site from a side view, right? And so maybe it came in through one particular blog post and starts crawling from there. It's not getting rhyme or reason of your site as a whole. And this is why it's important that your structure is aligned properly and that you submit your sitemap so you're giving Google the correct map from which to come inside and start grading. You want it to come through that front door, go through your categories, and then follow the links in each of the blog posts that are in those individual categories. That's how it, in an orderly process, begins grading and indexing your content, your site, to kind of figure out what it's supposed to do with it. And then that's where you begin building authority, because Google's like, okay, I know what this site's about. And then you produce more content that's optimized for SEO. And that's how you start building kind of that site authority, site-wide authority on a particular subject. Your content starts ranking more of your content starts ranking, and so forth. So your site structure is very, very important. So I'm going to hop over here and kind of just show you too. So keep in mind, this site is about 5 years old and has probably about 500 blog posts, almost all of which, well, except for the blogging stuff, all of the non-blogging is ranking on Google. I get over, well, I don't know about this weekend because Google had an update, but on average, I get about 100,000 views a month to the site just from Google. So you can see here, my site is Bible study and prayer and spiritual growth, which are all part of the same thing. So I have Bible study, I have prayer, I have printables for Bible, and then of course I have my Christian blogging. It's very evident when a person lands on my site what my site's about, what I have to offer. But it's also for those crawlers, when they come in through my domain, my category links, those are directional. It's like if you walk in the front door of an office building, what do? You look for signs, right? Signage that says, go here for this, go here for this. And those signs make sense. When the crawlers come into your site, you want to have very visible signs. That's what these are. And they need to make sense as far as what's behind the door. Okay. Now, this is an older site with a lot of content. This is a newer site. So this one is only about 2.5 years old. It gets about 50,000 sessions a month. It's all about prayer, obviously, but it comes in through my domain, Pray for Everything. I have categories for prayers, prayer resources, and praying. What's inside each of these matches. So these are actual prayers, like 5 prayers for this or that. These are various types of resources like printables and whatever. And these are basically methods and ways to pray and how to pray and reasons to pray and things like that. It makes sense. The reader makes sense of it because it's like, oh, she's got some prayers. Let me go here. But for the crawlers, it comes through my domain door. And these hallways are right here for it to follow. And then everything in those hallways matches the sign on the door. So for those of you who have never done this before, let me click out of here. This is a first step. If you're just getting your blog started, this part is very important. Let's say you've been blogging for a while and Google has just not been nice to you. This is kind of part of, now I can't give you an exact thing that you did or didn't do that why Google doesn't like you. Google is just Google. And even those of us who are doing it right often get hit. I slightly checked my stats this morning and it does seem to go down a bit, but I usually give it a few weeks to let it level out before I start freaking out. But there are things you should be doing that help mitigate the chances of it going downhill. You have to give Google proper signals from the get-go as to what your site is about so that it can then begin indexing your content accordingly and hopefully be nice to you in the algorithm. So if you have any questions, please drop them below, or of course, over in my Facebook group. That's actually easier way to get your questions answered. And I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, please let me know what doesn't make sense and I'll try to clarify it. But this is one step that I see that most Christian bloggers and bloggers in general, really, but really in Christian blogging, I see that it's just not being done. The whole blog link in the menu, just there's no value in it whatsoever. Now, if you were like a commerce site, like big business, like Pier 1 Imports or something, many sites are adding a blog to their sites, but their site itself is commerce, not content. Ours are content-driven websites. So in that case, blog is fine because people understand, oh, this is if I don't want to buy something, but I want to find tips on using it or how to design with it or whatever, I go to the blog. But on a content site, blog doesn't mean anything. Actually, what most normal people, like not bloggers, when they see the word blog, they assume it's you talking about yourself. I've actually had people tell me that aren't in the blogging world. They're like, I just thought a blog was like a person's personal diary on the site, and I ain't got time for that. So make it make sense. Put the categories out there, show them what they are, and make sure that they properly reflect what kind of content that you're producing on your site. So, okay, guys, that's all for this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.